Bram Stoker's version of Van Helsing was a professor, he was a doctor, an expert in the occult. And he was very mysterious and enigmatic, and he's brought in when these girls are dying, becoming anemic, and they're not sure what's going on, you know, because Dracula is taking advantage of them in their sleep. So he's brought in, and he's the enemy of Dracula. In our version, he becomes a legendary monster hunter, not just of Dracula, but of all evil. And he's younger, he's more adventurous, he's slightly more of a rogue. There's nothing academic about him whatsoever. And he's got a lot more weapons, and he's taller. There you go.
Growing up, were you a fan of these guys, Dracula and Frankenstein and the Wolfman?
You know, the first introduction I had to Dracula, believe it or not, was Love at First Bite with Vincent Price. So I didn't think he was that scary, you know. I thought it was quite funny. My first introduction to werewolf was American Werewolf in London, which did scare me a lot and was amazing. It's funny now when I see, I mean, this film, the transformations, I think, are spine-tingling. They're just extraordinary to watch on the big screen. And when I think about what used to kind of amaze us back 20 years ago, it seems so out of date. But I was a huge horror movie fan, but I hadn't seen the original monster movies until I worked on this film.
There's something very inherently sexy about the whole Dracula story. What is it?
Dracula's powerful, and he's quite funny. He is sexy. He's because he touches on that. Well, of course, it deals with immortality. He's got some pretty hot women around him as well, but he's got this power. He's very seductive, and what he has to offer, immortality, is something that we all want. I would say fear of death is probably what drives most of us our whole lives in almost everything we do. And we kind of love to hate him. He's one of those characters that we're beguiled by, you know. And Richard plays him, I think, really well. I think it's definitely one of the most interesting horror characters ever created, you know. I feel for Richard playing him because it's kind of like the Hamlet of horror movies, you know. How do you play Dracula?
What do you think of what Universal did here, of putting all these different monsters in one movie?
When I first heard about the idea, Steve, and I heard it from my agent, you know, this director, writer wants to meet with you, and I said, how on earth can you fit all of these icons, all of which have very three-dimensional characters to them? You know, they're not just monsters, they're not just evil. How do you fit all that in? And Steve amazed me because what he did was, the first thing for him was finding that idea of Dracula with his children and what he needs to make them live, and that idea was the birth of it all. I think that made it possible to make this not just an overwhelming battle of good and evil, but an adventure with, as Steve likes to say, no monsters but people with really bad problems. You know, you get to feel and get to understand all of their characters.
How challenging was it for you, the role?
I find every role challenging, otherwise I wouldn't do them. Physically it was very challenging, which was great fun, but realising these characters are hard too, because out of a movie, if a movie's 2 hours long, you know, most movies you get 2 hours of dialogue or situations to really explore the characters. Now in an action movie, it's very difficult to further your character through action. It's hard. You know, there's the odd moment where that can happen, but the amount of times where you really get to let the characters breathe are less. I remember the first 4 days of filming, we shot 10 pages of dialogue, you know, so you have to get as much into the smaller amount as you can, you know, to let the characters breathe.